In a little bit, I'm going to tell you about some things, at least, about my ministry over 5 years. I'd tell you all of it, but we'd still be here at dusk, and I know you don't want that. And you're going to tell me, I know, because I've been through this before, that I'm too modest, that I should take more credit, that the unusual vitality and success of this congregation in living and sharing its liberal religious values is all my doing, and so on and so forth. But really, I don't think that's true, and I don't even want it to be true. This is a tricky chapter you just heard from the Tao Te Ching, and the way it's often translated, that when a good leader leads, the people say, "We did it ourselves." As in, the smart leader hides her leadership, her vision, her work, so that the people will think they did it themselves when actually they were guided all the way. But that would be Machiavelli, not Lao Tse, who prefaces this statement with the comment that if you give no trust, you get no trust. And pulling one over on a blind proletariat, even for the best possible reasons, is not trusting. So I read this passage in a more nuanced way along these lines. I'm the designated leader, one by title and paycheck, but there are plenty of other leaders, and I am their servant. My job year after year is simply to notice what needs to be done and is not getting done, and fill in those holes for the good of the whole. Sometimes that's way in the background. Someone calling from the end of the line, "Remember, we're doing this for a good reason." Or, "Remember, we agreed we wanted to go that way." Sometimes what's required is more active, a miracle Sunday, for instance, which just isn't going to get done otherwise. Or to go back a little further in history, to keep asking questions about a path that seems obvious to everybody, but which would really just be a quick fix, way too easy, until others see the light and take up the cry. That's how a $35,000 bequest in 1993, which everybody thought should be used to create a handicapped accessible bathroom in the sanctuary, got morphed into a new office, an RE buildings, and a social hall with 2 handicapped bathrooms in the mid-1990s. A major triumph for a congregation that had forgotten that it could do big, amazing things. The leadership of leaders and people who trust each other and honor each other's leadership is so intricately intertwined that, "Oh, we did it," is not prideful blindness on the part of the people, nor skillfully hidden manipulation on the part of the leader. It is the actuality of the truth. In the cooking world, reduced is a technical term. It refers to boiling away water to concentrate flavors. A good reduction is a very precious thing in cooking, the base of soups, sauces, and gravies, and other delicious, highly flavored things. You reduce with heat. The heat agitates molecules and gets some moving so fast that they escape the surface tension of the liquid and become steam. What's left over in the pot is savor. This is the gourmet cooking version of the geological reality, that you don't get beautiful landscapes without a lot of rain and a lot of wind and a lot of rubbing and even a volcano or an earthquake or two. I've spent 25 years embedded in this institution, and there's no doubt about it. The result has been beautiful for the church as a whole and for me, especially if you think my gray hair is as beautiful as I think yours is. It feels a little risky to say some of this out loud, but frankly, we really can't deny that the cliffs worn by the weather at the corner of Carlisle and Comanche are beautiful. Not only physically beautiful, like this beautiful building, but less tangibly, beautiful minds carved by new ideas, beautiful hearts shaped by important relationships, and a beautiful, healthy institution with all indications of a vibrant future before it. So here's what I've learned in 25 years. I've learned that the marching band picture of leadership that we all have in our heads, of the leader out there in front with the big hat and the big stick, and the others following along in lines, making beautiful music together, is okay for some things, but in the end, rarely functional for Unitarian Universalists. Even when the task is suited to a drum major, like, say, moving the chairs from the old sanctuary into the new one, the band does not follow the script, and it gets it all done anyway. Most tasks aren't even suited to a marching band, so I'm glad to have found a better model, the Rainmaker. The drought, when I got here 25 years ago, was not related to water. Instead, it was related to trust, especially trust of ministers, but that had morphed over many years into a general distrust of all leadership. The drought had developed slowly over the 40-year life of the congregation, first from small and then from large disappointments and betrayals and losses. The congregation's story was told to me before I got here by the newly retired district executive, closest thing you have to a bishop, over a drink in a bar at the General Assembly. I had already visited here and met the extremely engaging search committee and seen the wonderful mountains, and I'd already been taken somewhat aback by the disconnect between the search committee's clear vision for the congregation's future and the reality of the buildings, the budget, and the package of worship materials they had given me. So Russ Lockwood, the district executive, told me a long story about missed opportunities and failed relationships and alcohol and misplaced ambition, more alcohol, and a minister more interested in writing fiction than writing sermons, and in the snowball effect that it had on the congregation over 40 years. It was a pretty sad story, ending with the sudden departure of my predecessor, who I was told resigned to the board before leaving for vacation and never returned, cementing in their minds the thought that all ministers are good for is abandoning the ship. They're a sturdy group, said that district executive. They've had to be to survive. But, and he leaned over his drink and said almost ferociously to the 35-year-old sitting across the table from him, "Do you know what this all means?" "Yes," I said. "It means it's going to be a long time before they trust me." And this surprised look crossed his face. He probably thought that 35 was too young to know that. "Well, okay," he said. "If you understand that, I think you should go. You'll do him good. Now you go and get your feet on the ground and learn the players and give me a call, and I'll tell you the rest of the story." I was elated to think that I had secured for myself a knowledgeable mentor, and I was buoyed by the excitement of my colleagues at that GA who said that I was the third female minister to be called to an important pulpit in as many years, and they took it as a sign that women were going to succeed in the ministry. I mention this to you because so much has changed in that area that you don't realize that your reputation as a pioneering congregation willing to take risks started before I even got here. William and I started planning to move. The district exec, my future mentor, he died suddenly. It did later occur to me to wonder exactly what he imagined I had meant by a long time. He probably should have asked. As a matter of fact, I had meant 2 or 3 years. Any experienced mentor would have said at least 5, but really in the end, it was 15. 15 years is a long time to sit on a porch, telling stories and talking to the farmers and waiting for the rain to come, but there were a few roofs to mend during those years. As a matter of fact, I'm sure we mended all the roofs during those few years. And in spite of the shaky, and another advisor looked over the landscape with me and said, "You should stay. You deserve to enjoy the fruits of all this labor." When Carl Jung told the story of the Rainmaker, which apparently he did often, his attention was drawn to the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world, by the fact that the Rainmaker had to get into balance with the Tao and actively resist the anxious reactivity of the villagers before the rain could come. But when that spiritual balance was attained, the physical world was affected. Well, I'm not sure it's that simple. But I have seen too much to say that Jung was entirely in woo-woo land on this point. In my experience, the hardest thing that a designated leader, like a parent or a teacher or a minister or even a drum major, does is to stay centered and balanced while others are crazed with anxiety or fury or whatever. And I believe that when leaders can stay centered in spite of it all, almost everyone is helped to calm themselves and be more effective. And while I wouldn't say that I believe that this calm influences the universe, I can't help but notice all the good things that happen to a village of people who have become calm and effective and focused on their mission and trusting of themselves and their leadership. Stuff happens like someone comes to them and offers to put a solar system on their roof. No cost, great benefits. Will you please let me give you a free lunch? That's how we got our first solar system up on our old roofs, and looks like we're going to put solar system on this roof soon too. Not quite as big a lunch, but just as free. Or a congregation we've been renting space to from one of our branches offers us to sell us their building. Please do this, 30 cents on the dollar, because it seems to them that we're better able to protect not only our own members, but them. Would that we could make rain. And who knows, maybe we do make rain. We do know that we make something almost as critical: healthy communities, generous people, and love. In 2001, in the aftermath of 9/11, two things happened to this congregation. The first was that we had an influx of visitors and new members, which began a growth spurt from the 500-member level of the previous decade to the almost 800 we are now. It's a very unusual thing to happen to a 50-year-old church in the middle of a long-term ministry in a stable neighborhood. Maybe even unheard of. Looking back, though, it seems clear to me that the drought of trust had finally ended. We needed a second minister, and in what seemed to me to be a stunning act of trust in yourselves, this congregation voted to spend all their reserves and increase their giving by 30% so they could have one. It was all your idea. For the record, my only contribution to it was agree that I would like a colleague. I wasn't even present for the meeting. Then somebody got the idea that we should be an internship site, a training area for new ministers. I thought that would be a lot of fun, and by then I thought I could teach them something about patience and leadership and rainmaking. But I knew we would never afford it. But somebody gave us the money to support 5 interns. More fruits of help. Now the rains were coming on time, year after year. The combination of very able associate ministers and very engaging interns, the last of whom is with us now, and my steady presence here seemed finally to chase away that ministers abandon us story that the congregation used to have. It's no longer in evidence, probably completely surprising to many of you here. By the time it disappeared, my beloved but always testing me foster child, I was the one who had the hard time believing in all the new trust. And I worked on that. And the rest is near history that most of you know about. We learned something from the evangelicals and started our branches. We kept growing, and by 2007 knew we'd need a new sanctuary. There was a recession, and we took a deep breath and we did it anyway. Raised the money to build this new building in the midst of the biggest recession since the Great Depression. We'd start experimenting with contemporary worship styles, another gift adapted from the evangelical world. It's been another lesson during my 25 years. We religious people have lots of very important differences, but we also have a lot in common, and we can learn a lot from the religious people around us. Another thing I'd started to notice was that evangelicals do ministerial training differently than we do. Ours is a denomination of small churches. We are the 14th largest UU church in the nation. And the most accepted UU wisdom about what ministers need to do and know is really not entirely appropriate for us. So when we were getting ready to hire another assistant minister, I wondered if we could take a page from the evangelical world and offer ourselves as a training ground for talented new ministers who look to have the capacity to be senior ministers in a few years, and perhaps even here. By that time, we were on a roll together, and we got the green light to do things a little bit differently in the UU world. That's the scheme that brought us Angela, and what a success that's being. It's great to be honored, wonderful to feel loved, good to know that a lot of good work over 25 years is appreciated. Most of all, it is really great to feel trusted. We've got a few more good years together, and I plan to cherish every moment of them and all the interesting projects they will bring. I hope you do too. Just don't give me all the credit, because really, we did it ourselves. Standing up.